Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you people are having good time. This is Abrar Ahmad Bhatti. So far we have discussed remote environment factors. These are economic, social, political, technological and ecological factors. And today we will discuss about second factor of external environment, that is industry environment analysis, where Harvard University professor Michael E. Porter put forward the concept of industry environment into the forefront of strategic thought and business planning. Michael E. Porter's work first appeared in the Harvard Business Review, in which he explains the 5 forces that shape competition in an industry. So in 1979, the Harvard Business Review published the article How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy by the Harvard professor Michael E. Porter. It started a revolution in the strategy field. In subsequent decades, Porter's 5 forces have shaped a generation of academic research and business practice. So this topic explores how competitive analysis can be done using Porter's 5 forces model. According to this model, the intensity of competition in an industry depends on 5 basic forces. These 5 forces are, as you can see in the figure, number 1, in the middle we have intensity of rivalry among industry competitors. Secondly, threat of new entrants. Thirdly, threat of substitute products. Fourthly and fifthly is about bargaining power of suppliers and buyers. Porter argued that the stronger each of these forces are, the more limited is the ability of established companies to raise prices and earn greater profits. With Porter's framework, a strong competitive force can be regarded as threat because it depresses profit, and a weak competitive force can be viewed as an opportunity because it allows a company to earn greater profits. So the first of Porter's 5 forces model is the intensity of rivalry among established companies within an industry. Rivalry means the competitive struggle between these forces are, the more limited is the ability of established companies to raise prices and earn greater profits. With Porter's framework, a strong competitive force can be regarded as threat because it depresses profit, and a weak competitive force can be viewed as an opportunity because it allows a company to earn greater profits. So the first of Porter's 5 forces model is the intensity of rivalry among established companies within an industry. Rivalry means the competitive struggle between companies in an industry to gain market share from each other. Firms use tactics like price discounting, advertising campaigns, new product introductions, and increased customer service or warranties. Intense rivalry lowers prices and raises costs. It squeezes or nipping profits out of an industry. So, intense rivalry among companies may have the opportunity to raise prices or to reduce spending on advertising. which leads to higher level of industry profits. Let's discuss the conditions or situation under which the intensity of rivalry is greatest. So as you can see in the figure, the first condition is number of competitors within the industry. In other words, multiple equal competitors. So if an industry has who all operate at an equal level of product or service quality, then there is a higher threat of competition. The second condition is diversity of competitor, which means if the industry is made of different types of companies who differ in their origin, their strategies, even their way of doing businesses, these diversifying ways of companies may change the nature of competition. The third condition is industry concentration, where the firms focuses on existing markets and not exploring expansion on new markets. Such concentration of firms increases the intensity of rivalry among existing competition. The fourth condition is sluggish industry growth, where an industry does not enjoy a rapid growth rate, then the only way for a company to increase its market share is to take it away from a competitor. The fifth condition is when there is low quality differences, or in other words, when there is undifferentiated products. The intensity of rivalry among existing competitors will be greater. This means that consumer choice will be based on price and value for money, which will naturally lead to price-based competition. The sixth condition is brand loyalty, which, if insignificant because of undifferentiated or similar products, then this will also intensify industry rivalry. The seventh condition is barriers to exit. If there are, then companies with low profit and growth may also have to remain active and will earn profits by any means. Some potential exit barriers might be ownership of specialized assets, fixed cost of exit from industry, and governmental regulations. The last condition is about switching cost, where if there is little or no switching cost for a consumer from one company product to same another company product within the industry or outside the industry, then the industry may be more competitive. This happens in undifferentiated industries or ones where the products are very similar in benefits, features, and quality. For more understanding, let's try to analyze intensity of rivalry among existing competitors, or when the intensity increases or decreases. So intensity of rivalry is high if competitors are numerous or more in number, as we discussed before. Similarly, where industry growth is slow. The another condition is where fixed costs, or in other words, cost of fixed assets like plant, machinery, tools, equipments, etc. are high. The next conditions are where competitors have equal size of business, products are undifferentiated, brand loyalty is insignificant, consumer switching costs are low, competitors have equal market share, competitors are strategically diverse, same as diversity of competitors we discussed before. The next condition is where there is excess production capacity, and lastly, where exit barriers are high. For example, the barriers like ownership of specialized assets, fixed cost of assets, and government regulations. On the other hand, this intensity of rivalry is low or weak if competitors are few and when there is unequal size of business among competitors. When competitors have unequal market share, when industry growth is fast, fixed costs are low, products are differentiated, brand loyalty is significant, consumer switching costs are high, when competitors are not strategically diverse, and when there is no excess production capacity, and lastly, when exit barriers are low. Now moving to the second competitive force of Porter's five forces model, that is threat of new entrants. It refers to the threat new competitors pose to existing competitors in an industry. Therefore, a profitable industry will attract more competitors looking to achieve profits. If it is easy for these new entrants to enter the market, if entry barriers are low, then this poses a threat to the firms already competing in that market. Before discussing these barriers to entry, let me share you how a new firm enters a market or an industry. For example, by takeover, where a company from outside the industry may take over an existing firm, thereby avoiding any of the barriers to entry. The second example is by diversification of product, where existing firms produces new categories of products and services that falls under other industries. The third example might be bringing some foreign-based competitive advantage to the industry. And the last example is an increase in demand of a particular products. Allow firms to enter the market to gain market share and profit. Coming back to the barriers of entry, the first barrier is economies of scale, which means when manufacturing or selling at a large scale, companies are able to avail cost advantages because per unit cost of the product falls. So when existing companies have this advantage, it can act as a barrier to entry because a new entrant will have to try to match the scale to achieve the same cost advantage as the existing company, which is not possible at the initial stage. The second barrier is brand loyalty, where if brand loyalty is strong, the new entrants will hesitate to introduce their products in the existing market unless bringing strategic advantage within that industry. The another barrier is the requirement of huge capital to entertain a market. Only those will attempt to enter the competitive market who have the resources to make high initial investments. The next barrier is the cumulative experience of the existing firms related to knowledge gained through hands-on work and through learning opportunities provided by the resources. The another barrier is about government and regulatory policies such as permits and licenses, which may be a strong barrier to entry. Similarly, there might be some government laws regarding conduct of business that may conflict with a company practices in other countries. The next barrier is about access to distributors and suppliers, where for existing firms relationships are well established, may have contracts or loyalties. Therefore, a new entrant will obviously need access to those and will need to invest extra in order to engage. The last barrier is switching cost, or the cost associated with the consumer's move from one company or product to another company or product. And if there are significant switching costs are involved, then a new entrant may not be able to create his place in the market, despite they may have to offer significant advantage to counter these switching costs at their own expense. Now, for more understanding, let's try to analyze when threat of new entrant is high or low. So high threat of entry of new competitors is when profit do not depend upon economies of scale, and the new firm will generate profit without gaining economies of scale. Next, when products are undifferentiated or similar. Similarly, threat of new entrant is high when brand name of a existing firm is not well known. The next point is when there is low initial capital investment. The new firms will easily start doing their business. The another condition is when there is low consumer switching cost involved and consumers can easily switch from existing company product to new company's product. Further, when access to distribution and suppliers is easy and when location is not an issue to establish business. When proprietary technology, materials, or equipment are not solely the ownership of one business. Similarly, when government policies and regulation does not borrow any issue. And lastly, when expected retaliation of existing firms is not an issue for new entrants, then there will be a high threat of entry of new firms in the market. Now, when the threat of new entry is low or weak, so if profitability depends upon economies of scale, when new firms have to gain economies of scale, which is impossible initially. Similarly, threat of new entrant will be low when products are differentiated or unique. The next point is when brand names are well known, and it will be impossible for new entrants to defeat those well famous brand names. And when initial capital investment is high, the new entrant will be unable to establish business. Similarly, when switching costs are high, assessing distribution and suppliers is difficult, and where location of a business is an issue. Proprietary technology, material, and equipments are an issue for new entrants, and where government policies, regulations, and expected retaliation of existing firms are an issue. The new entrants will not be able to enter the market. The next competitive force of Porter's five forces model is threat of substitute products. A substitute product is one that may offer the same or similar benefits to a company as a product from another company. Let me explain first what is substitute product. So substitute products are goods or two or more products that the consumer can use for the same purpose. For example, if someone does not have access to airplane, they can travel through car or bus. So car or bus is the substitute for airplane. Similarly, video conferences are a substitute for travel. Plastic is a substitute for aluminum. Email is substitute for mail. Well, our firms within an industry compete with industries producing substitute products. For example, companies in the coffee industry compete indirectly with those in the tea and soft drink industries because all these serve the same need of the customer for refreshment. So there are many situations or conditions in which the threat of substitutes is stronger than usual. Some of these conditions are shown in the figure. Here the first one is number of substitute products available, where all of the below factors can only come into play if there are actually substitutes available in the market. The second condition is buyer propensity to substitute, refers to buyer or customer loyalty to product or service. Thirdly, relative price performance of substitute, where any move to price higher than substitutes may lead to consumer migration and lost profit. Fourthly, perceived level of product differentiation, where if product quality or functions are higher than that of any product, then it is more likely that consumers will want to make use of this difference and switch over. And lastly, switching cost. If there are little or no switching costs for a consumer, then there is more chance that they may explore and move over to a more attractive substitute. In the absence of other factors such as brand loyalty or differentiation, the choice to move will not be a difficult one. Let's try to make understanding by analyzing the impact of threat of substitutes. So threat of substitute is high when substitute product is cheaper than industry product and the consumer will easily switch. Similarly, where consumer switching costs are low and where substitute product quality is equal or superior to industry product quality. Similarly, where substitute performance is equal or superior to industry product performance. Now, when the threat of substitute is low, where consumer switching costs are high and consumer will unable to switch. Another condition is when the substitute product is more expensive than industry product, so consumer will hesitate to buy. The another condition is when quality and performance of a substitute is inferior to industry product quality and performance. The consumer will not switch. And at last, when no substitute product is available that causes low or no threat of substitute. The fourth of Porter's 5 forces model is the bargaining power of suppliers. Suppliers are companies that supply raw materials, components, equipments, machinery, and associated products and services, depending on the industry. There are different types of suppliers. Some of these may be manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers, independent suppliers or craft people, and importers. Powerful suppliers make more profits by charging higher prices, by limiting quality or services. These powerful suppliers squeeze profits out of an industry and thus they are a threat. Let's discuss when the bargaining power of suppliers is high or strong and when it is low or weak. So the bargaining power of supplier is high or strong if there are limited or concentrated suppliers. In other words, when there are very few suppliers of that specific product, then there will be high or strong bargaining power of suppliers. Secondly, when buyer or a company who are purchasing from supplier, their switching costs are high. Thirdly, when buyer or purchasing company is not price sensitive, means price of the supplier products do not affect buying behavior of a buyer or company. Fourthly, when threat of forward integration is high, which means supplier might be strong enough to take over the buyer or company. Fifthly, when buyer or company purchase low volume of products from the supplier, that enables supplier to sell their products without any discounts or credits. At 6, when product is highly differentiated or unique, therefore supplier will have more bargaining power. At 7th, when buyer purchases comprises of small portion of supplier sales. At 8, when substitutes of supplier products are unavailable. And lastly, when buyer or company is uneducated about the supplier product. On the other hand, supplier bargaining power is low or weak if any of the following condition applies. When there are limited or concentrated buyers or companies who want to purchase supplier products, then the bargaining power of suppliers would be low or weak. Secondly, when buyer or company's switching cost is low, where these buyers and companies can make deals with other suppliers of the product without any switching cost or expense. Thirdly, when buyer purchasing behavior is affected by the price of changes of the supplier products, and the buyer will search for another suitable supplier. The next condition is when threat of forward integration is low, means supplier is not capable to take over buyer or company. Similarly, when buyer or company purchases product of supplier in high volume, obviously the terms of buyer would be acknowledged. The another point is when supplier products are undifferentiated or similar, or in other words, easily available in the market. The next condition is when buyer purchases comprises large portion of supplier sales. The supplier bargaining power gets weak or low. Similarly, when supplier's product substitutes are available. And lastly, when buyer is well educated regarding the supplier product. The fifth and the last of Porter's 5 competitive forces is the bargaining power of buyers. Refers to the ability of buyers to bargain down prices charged by the firms in the industry, or driving up the cost of the firm by demanding better quality and service. By forcing lower prices and raising costs, powerful buyers can squeeze profits out of an industry. Thus, powerful buyers should be considered as a threat. Alternatively, if buyers are in a weak bargaining position, the firm can raise prices, cut costs on quality and services, and increase their profit levels. So the buyer can be any customer who purchases finished goods. It can be any firm, government, or organization. There can be several different market conditions that determine whether the buyer will have power or not. Let's analyze when buyer power is high or strong and low or weak. So if there are more concentrated or limited or few buyers than selling firms, the bargaining power of buyers would be high or strong. Similarly, when buyer can switch to other sellers without any expense, and when there is high threat of backward integration, where buyer is more stronger to take over seller. The next point is when buyer is price sensitive and get affected by any changes in price and would search for new seller. The another point is when buyer is well educated about the seller product. Similarly, when undifferentiated or similar products are available for the buyer, and when substitutes are available, and when buyer purchases seller products in high volume or large portion of sales, then the buyer power is high or strong. On the other hand, buyer power is low or weak if buyers are numerous or more than sellers. If buyer switching cost is high and they cannot bear the extra expense, and if there is low threat of backward integration because of strong seller, and if buyer is not price sensitive, and if buyer is uneducated, and if seller is selling differentiated or unique products, and if buyer purchases product of seller in low volume or small portion of seller's sale. And lastly, when more substitutes are unavailable for buyers to purchase. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. That was the detailed view of Porter's 5 forces model. Hope you get some benefit of it. Do subscribe, share with your class fellows. See you next time. Take care of yourself and others. Jazakallah. Wassalam.